Do you ever wish that you could see the real Jesus? Not that Jesus is not real, but way back when he was walking around in Nazareth, maybe go along with him sometime when he did a construction job. That'd be kind of fun. And see maybe where he lived, and maybe sit down sometime with the disciples as Jesus was teaching or preaching. It really would have been kind of fun to see that. Maybe one of those kind of real perfect moments where our belief would be just really cemented because we had seen Jesus. It'd been fun to see Mary and Joseph also. I think that'd be kind of cool. Well, we have those perfect moments, and this Sunday we're looking at another one of those splendor-filled occasions where the disciples get to see something different. They had seen the real Jesus walking around all the time. But here was something different. This was on top of the mountain with some maybe cedar trees and their nice aroma that they have, and some birds singing maybe, and some puffy clouds. And here's Jesus that they had known standing there all shiny with Elijah and Moses. For them, it must have been one of those really perfect moments because they got all excited. As you heard in the lesson, Peter gets going faster than his brain can follow sometimes, which is, I do that too. But he's saying, well, isn't it so wonderful? It's just so wonderful up here. We just could stay here all the time. Of course, Jesus says, well, no, we have to go down. But it was one of those moments that I think brought the reality of Jesus, the humanness and the godliness of Jesus to the disciples. But indeed, they did go. They left that spot, went down the mountain. Of course, they were heading to Jerusalem. And the Greek is kind of interesting. If you translate it literally, it says, Jesus set his face on Jerusalem, which makes sense. He's heading in that direction. But it's there that this perfect moment kind of crumbles. And we get that Passion Week where Jesus is arrested and tortured and put on the cross. And these disciples who were so wonderfully in the moment on top of the mountain go running off into the night, falling over bushes and running into trees in the dark. Not so perfect a moment. Well, back to these perfect moments. You ever had one of those where Jesus and belief and everything just all kind of came together in this one moment, and it was just like, wow. Maybe it was at camp. Some of you went to camp. Out there at night, campfire and singing, and the counselor starts talking about Jesus, and Jesus just becomes real in your mind, and it's always been there. Maybe it was Christmas Eve service with the silent night and the candles, that perfect moment. Everybody kind of remembers that moment. Or Easter morning, that splendid Easter morning, Jesus risen from the dead. My perfect moments, haven't been too many of them. One of them actually happened in the old church building of St. Luke's in Stanton, Nebraska. I say the old church building because it was falling apart. They had to build a new one. So my wife and I were sitting in the balcony. Pastor Peterson he came to us from Bruno and Ascove, Minnesota. I'm sure everybody knows where that is. It's up by Duluth, as far north about as you can get. Anyway, Pastor Peterson was talking about Jesus and the reality of Jesus. And he mentioned that Jesus is mentioned in Roman history. And it was one of those, moments for me. Like, this, what Romans mentioned, real Jesus. Before, Jesus had been kind of in this fairy tale kind of thing. And this just made it come together. I never forgot that. That's about the biggest, one of those aha moments I've ever had. Even when my parents died, I just felt they were with God and God was taking care of them somehow. Even the decision to come be a pastor wasn't any big, it was just that feeling that that's what should be done. You know, we've all had these kind of feelings, these moments when you might say the belief in Jesus is real and everything just came together all at one time. But those occasions are kind of few and far between sometimes. Our life kind of fills in the rest of the time. Like maybe financial things come and the bills are coming and you wonder, what in the world are we going to do? Or maybe illness comes, like the flu, and you just feel miserable. Or maybe it's a family problem with, why can't everybody just get along with each other? Or maybe there was a death, and it really shook your faith, your belief, and you wondered what was going on. Luther got caught up in that particular moment. His daughter, their daughter, but I think she was like 13, 14, something like that, died. And it sent Luther into deep depression. And he didn't know anything about believing or whether he belonged to God anymore or whether God loved him anymore. And it was baptism that actually pulled him out of that. He thought back on his baptism. He thought, well, on that day that I was baptized, God claimed me in the waters of baptism and made me part of the life of Christ forever. And from that point, he could come back. It was almost one of those perfect moments, you might say. Well, you wonder, we're talking all about ourselves and Luther and all these, but what about Jesus in these spectacular moments? We could talk about the birth of Jesus because, well, he probably didn't remember too much of that. But there was the baptism, this kind of spectacular moment. And this moment we're talking about today, the transfiguration. But other than those, if you would have met Jesus, he'd have been dressed like everybody else in his work clothes. You might have even missed him as you were walking down the road. He spent his life as we spend our lives, just in everyday things, eating and sleeping and working. But this shows the godliness that was in Jesus. The idea that Jesus came to take on our lives, being God taking on our lives. And as we know pain and suffering, Jesus knew pain and suffering. As we have faced death, Jesus has faced death. And as we someday will die, Jesus died. But even in all of that, there comes that perfect moment that we'll be celebrating just in a few weeks down the road. It's called Easter, the resurrection of our Lord. One of those perfect moments that said to the world, Jesus is here forever for all of us. So it would be really nice to have met the real Jesus. But I contend we meet the real Jesus all the time. We meet Jesus through all the people that are Jesus for us. And they in turn meet Jesus in every one of us. Because we are part of the body of Christ. That's what we're called to be. And anytime you meet Jesus, it's one of those perfect moments. Amen.
Amen.